Hey everybody, it's Master Gallengeist here, bringing you my review for the latest episode of Game of Thrones, Eastwatch. And I really enjoyed this episode, and I can't wait to see where we're going to be ending up for the season finale, because at the moment, I think it's more going to be setting up the consolidation of the living to finally battle the dead, because of all the stuff that kind of fell out from this episode. So, this episode starts off and we see Jaime and Bronn coming out of the river, like, right after last episode. And they're, like, on the bank, and Jaime's like, "You could have killed me!" And Bronn's like, what were you doing? What the fuck were you thinking? He's like, "I was gonna try and end this war." And he's like, "Didn't you notice the fucking dragon in between you and her?" And they're just, like, talking. He's like, "Yeah, what do I say to that?" And then Bronn's like, "Listen, dragon doesn't get to kill you. You don't get to kill you until I get what I'm owed. I am the only one that gets to kill you at that before that." It's like you need to get me what I'm owed. Everything. It's like, okay. And then Jaime's like thinking about, like, this is only one dragon. She's got two more. What are we supposed to do? And Bronn's like, "There's no we in this stuff. I hop out on dragons. I ain't gonna be there when they're flaming King's Landing and all that. No." And then Jaime's like, "Well, I gotta tell Cersei," and he's like, "You better just jump back into the river at that point, because that's just as nasty." So then we get into Tyrion walking along the battlefield and seeing all the carnage and destruction, and him just being kind of like shaken by everything. This isn't what he wanted, and seeing the, like, the Dothraki go through and picking up spoils and swords and all that kind of stuff. It's like really kind of bringing it home. So then we see the Dothraki also leading the prisoners up to Dany and Drogon on this hill and everything. And then, of course, Dany's giving her speech to her prisoners. "I know what Cersei's told you, that I come here to destroy your cities, burn your homes, murder you, and, like, orphan your children, and that's Cersei, not me. So all I wanted to do is destroy the wheel that's, like, crushed rich and poor, crushed everyone, and change up what's been going on." And she's like, "All right." Because that wheel has only benefited Cersei Lannister and those like her. So she's like, "You have a choice. Either bend the knee and join me, or you refuse and die." And I'm like, that's exactly the kind of thing that Cersei Lannister would say. That's actually the kind of thing that Aerys would say, in my opinion. And of course, Tyrion's kind of like shaken by that, and he's like, I don't really like that. And she's trying to make it better and say, like, "We can leave the world better than we found it." And of course, some in the crowd bend the knee, not a lot. And then, of course, Drogon roars. That gets more people to bend their knee, except for Lord Tarly and Dickon. And, of course, she asks him to come forward, and he's like, "I'm not going to kneel to you. Yeah, I've already got a queen." And, of course, Tyrion's trying to talk him into it, like, "Listen, I know it's my sister, but that's only recently. Otherwise, you had another rightful queen. She destroyed House Tyrell for all time." And he's like, "It seems that your allegiances are kind of flexible." And he's like, "There's no easy choices in war. And you can say whatever about your sister. She was born here. She's lived all her life here. You, on the other hand, murdered your own father and just support a foreign invader. And it's cool to see these different kind of sides on these issues." And he's like, "One with no ties to these lands, with armies of savages at back, won't trade honor for life." And, of course, Dany says, "I respect that." And, of course, Tyrion's trying to get this out. He's like, "Well, maybe he'll take the black, send him up to the wall. He's a valuable soldier." And of course, he's like, "No, you're not my queen." So, of course, the Dothraki go forward to take him. And, of course, Dickon's like, "You'll have to kill me, too." Of course, Lord Tarly's like, "Stop doing what you're doing, you stupid idiot." And, of course, he's like, "Well, you're the future of the house. You don't want to we've already lost one great house. We don't want to wipe out another." And he's trying to get him to bend the knee. And of course, Lord Tarly's like nodding his head to him, and like Dickon's like, "I will not." And of course, this pains Randall Tarly. And Tyrion's like, "Your Grace, throw him in a cell. That'll change it up. That'll make their in the dark for a couple of weeks. Will make them rethink and everything." And she's like, "I'm not here to put people in chains." if the option's there, many will take it. If she gave them a choice, they made it. If you start beheading entire families, and she's like, I'm not going to behead them. Then, of course, the Dothraki take them. We see Lord Tarly hold his son's arm as Dany gives the command, Dracarys and Drogon incinerates them. And, of course, this freaks out Tyrion, and it freaks out the rest of the prisoners to bend the knee to Dany. And it's like, yeah, granted, this might be what you think is needed for this war, but that's what your father did. That's the step in delineation that you've got. You've decided to incinerate people to try and have fear, to be a conqueror. Granted, that might be needed to break this system of the Game of Thrones, but that's how the game's played already. You're already playing by the same rules. When does it get to a point where you're like, you've annoyed me, I will set you on fire? Now, granted, we know more about Dany's personality, and hopefully that she would be able to not do that. But that's the thing in Game of Thrones. People start changing, and either change worse or better, depending upon what choices they make. So we'll have to see how this really holds up to what's going on. And then we get to see Jaime talking to Cersei and relaying what's been going on. Of course, he's like going through the keep, and Qyburne's like, oh, hi, and kind of like leaves. But then he's like talking to Cersei. She's like, how many did we lose? And he's like, there's not really full accounting, but you pretty much lost all your forces. So, of course, she's trying to go through. It's like, well, it's not armies that win wars. We have the Tyrell Gold, and we got the Iron Bank, so we'll just buy mercenaries and everything. And, of course, that'll work. And then Jaime's like, no. I've seen the Dothraki fight. I don't think any army that I've seen can beat them. They weren't fighting for war. They were killing for sport. And it's like, holy shit. He's like, that dragon burnt 1,000 wagons. Qyburne's scorpion hit it with a bolt about as big as you, and it didn't stop it. And she has 3 of them. This isn't a war we can win, and I like Jaime's pragmatic views of this. Cersei is just fucking nuts, and just wants to keep going on because she's got power now, and she wants vengeance, and she doesn't care who lives and who dies. Just them to live. And she's like, what do you want me to do? Super peace? I sit on her father's throne. You betrayed and murdered her father. Like, what's she gonna make? I wouldn't count on Tyrion to intercede on our behalf. By way of apology for murdering father and son, and of course he goes into the whole spiel of Olenna. He's like, he didn't do it. And, like, really going into it. Of course, Cersei doesn't believe him at first, but then he goes into it with Olenna. And she confessed before she died. And she's like, is that before or after the poison? He's like, after. And of course, that kind of changes her. Like, yeah, if you're dying, there's no need to really lie. And of course, he's like, I did believe her. And he starts going into it to kind of really convince her. So, if you were Olenna, who would you rather have your granddaughter marry? Tommen or Joffrey? And her, like, face starts to, like, show the realization of what he's saying. And he's like, well, if Marjorie was married to Tommen, of course, the real ruler would be Olenna behind the 7 kingdoms. And of course, she's like, I shouldn't have listened to you. She should have died screaming. And he's like, she's dead. Her grandchildren are dead. Her house is destroyed. And, yeah. And if we don't find a way out of the war, we're going to be destroyed as well. And she's like, we either fight and die, or we submit or die. I know my choice. You're a soldier, you should know yours. And he's looking at her like, Olenna's right. She's nuts. She doesn't really recognize what she's saying. So, then we get to Dragonstone with Jon, and he's like looking at it on a cliff, and we see Drogon come back, and this is a pretty cool scene. It's further cementing the fact of Jon's Targaryen status. So, of course, Drogon's coming back to him, like lands, walking his way, kind of roaring at him, and then gets really close. And, of course, he starts sniffing at him. Dany's kind of watching from on top of his back. Jon takes off one of his gloves and, like, puts it up. He sniffs it a little bit more and allows Jon to touch him, which not really many other people have been allowed to touch the dragons. The only other one has been like Tyrion, and other people can kind of get close, but never close enough to touch. The only one that's really been able to do it is Dany and Tyrion. So it's like really putting into the fact of cementing his status as the son of Rhaegar and Lyanna, and making the second head of the dragon. Of course, we don't know who the third head is, but I got my theories that it would be Tyrion, most probably. So, that was pretty cool. We see him kind of like flying off, and of course, Dany's kind of impressed that he's able to touch Drogon and kind of pet him, and then we see the other dragons flying in the distance. And she's like, they're beautiful creatures, aren't they? And they're beautiful, aren't they? And Jon's like, that's not the word I'd use, but yes, they are. And Dany, of course, looking at him like, what? He's like, gorgeous beasts. And she's like, they're not beasts. No, to me. No matter how big they get, they're still my children. And he's like, okay, so you weren't gone long. And she's like, no, but I've got fewer enemies than I did yesterday. And she's like, what, you don't approve? And they start going into what he's had to do. How many men have you killed retaking Winterfell from the Boltons? Thousands. And she's like, all we want to do is help our people. The only way we can do that is from positions of strength. And sometimes with that strength, we have to do terrible things. And it's like, yes and no. You have to watch out how that's going. Jon, of course, has to learn to be more tactful in what he's done. That's what's happened since he was killed. And Dany just needs to learn the goalpost, because she's kind of moving it more towards Cersei. She's like, to defeat Cersei, I have to employ the same methods as her, and that's like really dangerous. So of course, that's where they're starting to get into it, and Dany was asking him about the knife in the heart bit. And Jon just played it off as just Davos being like exaggerating and being kind of theatrical. But if you think about it, Sir Davos is kind of a no-nonsense kind of guy. I mean, he'll kind of say an interesting line to like get his point across or whatnot, but he does not really over-exaggerate things. He tells it like it is. And it's like, we'll have to see. He's got to bring up that point it's got to be brought up, because it just adds more to his leadership role of what he has gone through. He has died for his people. He has died to do what he believes is right, and he came back to finish the job. So, we'll have to see how they handle that fallout. So, of course, that's kind of where it's left off at that point, because it also actually come up. They say this man says that he is a friend of yours, and we see Ser Jorah's back. And this was a pretty cool reunion, and she's like, well, it seems you've healed yourself, because he like kneels and all that, introduces him to Jon. This is my old friend, this is Ser Jorah Mormont, and he's like, oh, I served with your father and all that. And it's like, okay, cool, yeah. And of course, he wants to say like, alright, I've been here, I'm here to serve you. Tell me how to serve you and all that. And it was cool to see him kind of like hug and just kind of get back to normal. So of course, and also after they kind of hugged and everything, we see Ser Jorah looking at Jon like, are you kind of like competition or whatnot? So we'll kind of have to see how that kind of shakes out. Then we shift to Ravens, and we see their eyes flickering with the wargame, and of course Bran is using them to fly over the wall of Eastwatch and get a bead on what's going on with the White Walkers. We see that they have a giant army. It's like huge. A lot of dead north of the wall. And we don't see any more kind of giants or whatnot. I think we've seen that shot just to give us an idea of what other dead things they've got. If like a dragon gets killed, or they can summon an ice dragon, then we're in problem territory. But, of course, the Ravens get close to the Night King. He looks at them, they disperse and kind of freak out, and Bran's like, okay, they are getting pretty close, says to Maester Wolken. He's like, send Ravens, we need to do that. And, of course, that's where that ends. Then we see Archmaester, the Archmaester talking with all the other Maesters, talking about getting this, and everybody's kind of just saying that it's stupid. winter, like prophecies of doom always come around winter, pretty much dismissing him. He's like a cripple boy, seeing things, seeing dead men march beyond the wall. And of course, Sam is coming at this point with books, and he's like, cripple boy, Brandon Stark? And he's like, yeah, you know him? He's like, yeah. And of course, they're bringing up the stuff with the three-eyed raven and all that, and they're like, okay. And he's like, well, I let him through the wall years ago, and yeah, he somehow survived that and came back when no one else would. And I think you should listen to what he has to say. And they're like, you should just need to go back to your scribe work. Perhaps you need more discipline because you're thinking stupid. And of course, the Archmaester's like, well, I sense a more concrete proposal coming on. And of course, Sam really gets into it. He's like, all right, everyone trusts and respects you. So if you say something's real, they'll believe that. So you advise the lords to send him north to hold the wall. They'll do it. Tell the maesters and the citadel, search everything about the long night. Find something to defeat the army of the dead for good. It could be done. And everybody's like, well, the news could be authentic, but it could also be employed by the Dragon Queen to have the lords abandon their lands so she could conquer them. And it's like, yeah, that could be a possibility, but of course, Sam's like, no, please, please. And of course, everybody's like, yeah, it's more like that. And they're like, all right, we'll write to the Maester at Winterfell and try and get more clarification. And they're like, well, that's all Sam. And he goes with the books, kind of pissed off. And we get that they're like, because they bring up other people bringing up other stupid prophecies as well. And he's just kind of like, whatever, fine. And the rest of the Maesters are talking to the Archmaester and is like, did you tell him about his brother and his father? He's like, he's a good lad. I haven't had the heart to tell him yet. And it's like, wow, okay. So then we get to Tyrion and Varys with the scroll from Winterfell. And they're just kind of talking about what's been going on with Dany. Because the kind of objections that I bring up are the things that Tyrion and Varys bring up. Because he's like, all rulers command you to bend the knee. That's why they're rulers. He gave Tarly a choice, took up arms against her. What else could do? And then Varys is like, not burn him alive alongside of his son. It's like, and he's like, I'm the hand, not the head. I can't make the decision for her. And then Varys starts going and it's like, hey, that's what I did. I was an information purveyor. I found the traitors, but I didn't burn them. And he's like, it's not me doing it. At every stage, when I hear their screams, see their hair burning, smell their burning flesh, when Arius was doing it, it's not me doing it. I talk to myself. It's just seeing those inches, how it goes. Like, at first, she's burning people that have outright fought against her. What happens next when she perceives that people are going to wrong her or do harm to other people? If it's just in her head, she's just like, Dracarys, burn them. That's where Varys is going and being like, I've seen that stuff. And he doesn't want that to happen again. And he's like, seeing him drink the wine too and finish it, he's like, well, Dany's not her father and never will be with the right counsel. We have to counsel her correctly. And then, of course, Tyrion's like, well, what's that say? It's a sealed scroll for the King of the North. And then he's like, well, what does it say? Well, nothing good. So then, of course, we cut to everybody in the Dragonstone Council Chamber, Jon reading it, being like, all right, I thought Arya and Bran were dead. And, of course, Dany's happy. But he's like, she's like, you don't look happy. Well, Bran saw the Night's King and his army marching towards Eastwatch. And if they make it past the wall, and everybody's like, well, it's kept him out for thousands of years, presumably. He's like, I need to go home. He's like, I don't have enough men, but I'll fight with what I have. Unless you want to join me. And she's like, leave everything so Cersei can take it? No thank you. So, she's like, I don't really think, and perhaps not. Cersei thinks the Army of the Dead's a story. And it's made up by children. And he's like, what if we prove her wrong? And it's like, I don't think, she'd come see the dead at my invitation. And so bring the dead to her. He comes up with the idea that if we can get one of the whites, or one of the White Walkers, down to Cersei, make sure that everything kind of works out, that she would see them to do this, and a parlay, which is kind of iffy, that hostilities would probably be stopped and be like, this is a pretty big thing. Now, my main issue with this was they kind of tried it with the dead hand, but by the time it got there, it was rotten. My only issue comes into effect in how can they get... It would mainly have to be a White Walker that they would have to capture, because we don't know the range of control that the White Walkers have over their whites. Because usually when you go into magic, depending upon how you do it, if you go for a more realistic point, it would be the amount of magic and energy you'd have to expend would increase over the distance. Like, it wouldn't take you that much to control a couple thousand whites within a 5-mile radius. You stretch that out to a couple thousand leagues, it could just turn back into a dead body. Now, granted, since everything's flowing faster, I doubt that this will become that much of an issue. But it's like, okay, how are we going to do this? Alright, John, she was going to send Ser Jorah up north to do it. He's like, let me be of service. And they're like, well, I really think that I need to go do this raid myself. And of course, Sir Davos is like, don't do that. No. And then Dany's like, I haven't given you, permission to do this. And he's like, I'm the only one that's fought them. I'm the only one who knows how to deal with them. And he's like, I don't need your permission. I'm a king. I came here knowing that you could have beheaded me, you could burn me alive by dragons, you were a stranger. Now I'm asking you to trust me, a stranger, to do what I need to do. And of course she nods. And before this, we get them figuring out how to talk to Cersei about this. Davos smuggling Tyrion into King's Landing to talk to Jaime to try and get a parlay going to figure out how to do this. And it was kind of cool to see everybody kind of getting together on the same page, even though there's still kind of issues to work out. So then we get to Arya at Winterfell and seeing her in the hall, seeing Lord Glover and, of course, Lord Royce of the Vale saying that they're kind of pissed off that Jon went south and that they should have made Sansa Queen of the North and all that. But of course, Sansa's like, no, Jon left me in charge. We're going to keep doing what we've been doing. And of course, there's murmuring and everybody sits down. It's like, okay. And of course, we see Sansa talking with Arya, warning that this would happen and shouldn't have left the North. But Arya's like, he trusted you to hold it. It's not easy to do that. They're all proud. And Arya's like, you're in Mother and Father's chambers? And she's like, oh, is there a problem? And she's like, nothing. And he's like, don't do that. Say what you mean. And she gets into you like nice things. You like feeling better than everyone. And she's like, you're angry with me. They insult Jon and you don't pretty much take him out for it. She's like, well, I'm listening to their complaints. And she's like, well, their opinions are important because they've got an army that could leave if we frickin' piss them off. She's like, well, we could take their heads off because Arya has gotten to the point that if she sees a threat, she eliminates it so that way it's not a threat. I don't completely agree with what that is entailing, but with all the situations she's been in, I don't really fault her for it. But, of course, she's like, well, if Jon doesn't come back, we need every support and work together to finish what we've started. And, of course, she's like, well, no, you need their help to have this and be the one to hold it. And Arya's like, you're thinking it right now. You don't like that you're thinking it right now, but you are. And, of course, she's like, I got work to do. And Arya leaves. And it's like, but saying, my lady. And, of course, you can hear the disdain as she says it. It's like, damn. So then we go to Davos and Tyrion. They're on a boat at King's Landing, and they're like, okay. They're kind of reminiscing. Tyrion's like, the last time I was here, I killed my father. And Davos is like, well, the last time I was here, you killed my son. But he doesn't say it. I mean, he just says it matter-of-factly. It's like, yeah, it's weird. So, okay, I'm gonna go to Flea Bottom. He's like, aren't you gonna watch the boat? Well, I got things to do. And he's like, well, what if somebody steals it? Well, then we're fucked. So, better hurry and be quick. So, it's like, oh shit. So, of course, then we get it kind of split up. We see Braun and Jamie kind of going down into the kind of catacombs of King's Landing, where all the dragon skulls are. Braun having it the pretense of training to fight the Dothraki, but of course, that's how Tyrion got his in, talking with Braun. And of course, Jamie's kind of pissed off. Braun's like, I'll leave you to it. Goes. And of course, he's like trying to figure out how to talk to him and everything. He's like, you made me look like a complete fool hitting Casterly Rock with how you did it, but you were 3 steps ahead. That was pretty cool. And he's like, just like father. And Jamie's like, I said to Braun, if I ever saw you again, I would cut you in half. He's like, I'll take you on with a training sword, a sparring sword. And he's like, he was going to execute me. I was innocent, and he was going to execute me. He hated me for what I was. And of course, Jamie's like, I let you go. You went back to kill him. What's up with that? And he's like, well, that's what Jamie's thinking. He's not talking about it yet. Of course, Tyrion's like, Dany's going to win the war. You're a military man. No way around it. Dany's not her father. How about we suspend the hostilities if Cersei agrees to certain terms? And he's like, she won't bend the knee. And he's like, we're not going to ask that. And of course, we've got a more important request. And then he's like, Jamie looks intrigued. Then we get to see Davos, like, going through, and we find Gendry. It's like, yes! Alright. And he's looking very Robert Baratheon. He's got the colors and everything. And as he's getting ready to leave with Davos, he gets a warhammer that we can see that, of course, was Robert Baratheon's chosen weapon. And seeing them, like, get together and everything was really cool. Davos making the joke, I thought you were still rowing and all that, because everybody's like, last time we saw him, he was rowing a boat. What the hell's up with Gendry? And he's like, well, yeah, I've been doing good here. He's like, I know I should have checked the Street of Steel first, and saying that he's been doing what he's needed to do. He's hated making weapons for the family that's killed his father, has been trying to kill him. And he's like, well, I got something. He was going to kind of explain it, but like, Gendry's like, oh, I'm ready. And he's like, you should get a sword. He's like, not my style. Picks up the warhammer. It's like, yeah, ready to go. And it's just really cool to see how ready to go he is. And he's himself, but you see elements of a younger Robert in him. One that's not beaten down with have gone through a war and losing his love. That was the main downfall of Robert, not giving a crap anymore. So, of course, they get to the boat, and he's like, okay, keep your name to yourself and everything. We'll be fine. Gold Cloaks come, pretty much like, hey, the docks are down that way. He's like, yeah, we kind of parked it here because we didn't want to deal with people like you. So, 5 gold dragons apiece? Man, you're old. No, 15 apiece. Ah. So he gives it out. They're like, what's in the boat? Wine, ham. It's like, fermented crab. Putting it off as an aphrodisiac and everything. And it's like, okay. And, of course, as they're leaving, Tyrion comes back. It's like, hey, dwarf, where'd you get that scar? It's like, crap. He tries to pay him off for, like, not as much as Cersei for this. And then, of course, Gendry takes his battle hammer and frickin' kills both of them by smashing them in the face. It's like, alright, I like you, he'll do. So then, of course, we get to Jamie and Cersei then. And of course, Qyburne's like, can I give you something? And she's like, it won't be necessary. So, of course, Qyburne leaves, and they start kind of talking. And he's like, gonna get to talking about Tyrion and everything, and he's like, I met with Tyrion, and she's like, I knew. And he's like, what's going on? Alright, Dany wants to meet, and she's like, oh, to discuss surrender? It's like, no, an armistice. And she's like, she won a great victory. Why now? And he's like, the army of the dead march on the 7 kingdoms. He's claiming proof, and of course she chuckles, and she's like, how are you going to punish him? Tyrion? No, Bronn for betraying you and setting up this meeting without your knowledge or consent. It's like, Jesus. And he's like, you knew this was going on. Why did you let it happen? She believes an accommodation with the Dragon Queen would work at this point in their best interest. Gotta work like father. Figuring more to work like taking out Robb and their enemies like they have been doing, and doing it kind of smartly. And she's like, all right, we have to do it for this, for us, for our house, for this, and then holds her stomach, and they look at each other, and he's like, well, who are we going to say is the father? And she's going to say, she said, you. And he's like, what do other people think? Now, at this point, I don't know if Cersei's pregnant or not. It fits into certain things, but I lean more towards the realm of, the Qyburn would be in it. I would lean more towards the realm that she is faking it to help more easily manipulate Jaime. But if she does have another child, I don't know how that'll work with like the given prophecies or if some other weird things would be going on. So this is definitely an interesting new development, and they're like hugging and being like, yes, I can be this father. We don't have to hold to the opinions of sheep because we're lions. But Cersei then kind of undercuts it by saying, never betray me again. And it's like, she's gone. She's saying that to someone that she's supposed to love. So, of course, Davos takes Gendry. They've gotten on Dragonstone, pretty much talking his way through his story that he's supposed to have. And, of course, Gendry doesn't do that. He just says he's Robert Baratheon's son, a bastard, and, of course, just kind of says it to Jon, and, like, Davos is like, damn it. But Jon's, like, liking the straightforwardness and everything, and he's like, I don't want to sit this one out. I want help. And he's like, okay, well, it's cool. I only saw your father at Winterfell, and he's like, well, I met yours in my shop. He's like, huh, you're a lot leaner, and you're a lot shorter. I'm like, nice Stormtrooper kind of reference. And then just them getting along really cool was just very awesome. I like seeing a kind of, this is what it would have probably been, Robert and Ned being younger, and just seeing a cool kind of friendship get together and be like, well, I might not be able to hold a sword, I know how to use my hammer, and I want to help. And maybe he will help, like, bring the White Walkers in and possibly be able to do some forging with the Dragon's Glass to possibly either make new Valyrian steel or to forge interesting new weapons from the Dragon Glass to help with the war effort. But it was just really cool, and seeing them kind of doing that was a really cool scene. So then we get to see Jorah with, like, getting the boat intact. We get a cool scene with him and Tyrion pulling out the coin that was supposed to get them the rest of their lives. And he's like, well, use this, take this with you, but I want it back. And of course we see Dany coming down, and he says this because he's like, bring that back because our queen needs you. And it's pretty cool. And we see that Dany comes up and she's like, well, we should be better at saying farewell because of how many times you said it now. So, of course, he just kind of like grabs her hands and then kisses them, and kind of we see Jon Snow come, and she kind of goes off to get everything packed in, and Jon Snow comes up and he's like, if I don't return, at least you don't have to deal with the King of the North anymore. And she's like, well, I've grown used to him. And he's like, good fortune in the wars to come, Your Grace. She nods to him, he nods back, and then of course Jon gets in the front and helps push, and we see Jorah looking back at them as they're kind of going off to go to Eastwatch. So then we get to Sam and Gilly, and this is one of the big important scenes that's going on. Because Gilly's like telling how many steps from the Citadel because of this High Septon of Maynard's kind of stuff that he's recorded everything, like bowel movements. He's like quizzing Sam for what's going on, and we get into this. She asks what an annulment means. He's like, well, it's when a man sets aside his lawful wife. And she's like, Maynard said he issued an annulment for Prince Rhaegar, which means Prince Rhaegar Targaryen, and remarried him to someone else at the same time in a secret ceremony in Dorne. That's where the Tower of Joy is. That's where Jon was born. So that really proves that Jon is a legitimate Targaryen. That means that Prince Rhaegar annulled his marriage to his Dornish wife, and then remarried Lyanna Stark to make sure that Jon Snow would be legitimate. Now, granted, we'll probably call him Jon Targaryen for the foreseeable future, but we don't know what his actual name is at this moment, because Ned would probably make it so that most connections would be gone. But, of course, this just, not only what we've seen from Bran, not only what we've seen with the dragons, we have actual written proof of Jon's lineage. And hopefully Julie keeps this book, because, of course, at this point, Sam interrupts her right as she's about to get into it, and goes off about how the Maesters are being stupid asses, and we'd have us rather be, like, thralls to the Night's King, and just, like, ignore all this stuff that could, like, help us on shelves. And he's just pissed off at the whole situation, because these are supposed to be these smart people, and instead of, like, looking for the things that'll help us, I've got to record how many shits this dude's taken. Of course, Joey corrects him because he said the number of steps, but to be fair, the dude probably recorded that many bowel movements. Because if you're into that kind of stuff, if you record how many steps are in the Citadel, you record a lot of bowel movements then at that point. So it's like, yeah, it's kind of funny, and kind of just like seeing Joey kind of being like, no, this is what I said. And Sam's just like, it's the point, and just like kind of fed up with it, takes the book, kind of gives it to little Sam, goes into the Citadel at night, takes the important books that he can from the restricted section, and then kind of looks at everything and just be like, yeah, okay. So, of course, then he's out. We have him, Jilly, and little Sam in a cart, and she's like, are you sure you want to do this? And he's like, she's like, you always wanted to be Maester. And he's like, I'm tired of reading achievements of better men. So, of course, then they leave. We get this cool shot of the Citadel Tower, and that's pretty much where that's left off. So, the important thing is Jon needs to talk to Bran to get, like, some information, and then completely, hopefully, with Sam to get the full impact of his lineage. Now, of course, that raises issues of the legitimate Targaryen to rule. But, of course, they got bigger problems at this point, so we'll see how that goes. Then, of course, we get an interesting section with Arya. She's spying on Littlefinger, seeing him talking to a serving woman to kind of, like, get information, we assume, and, like, pay her off. Then she sees him talking to, of course, Lord Glover and Lord Royce. Of course, then he goes off. We see him go to his room. We see Maester Wolkan give him what he had found in Master Lewin's records. He then leaves his room. Arya breaks in and is able to find where he had hid the scroll, and it's by Sansa writing to Robb to tell him to bend the knee to Joffrey. And, of course, this kind of still works into Arya's narrative in her head that Sansa doesn't give a shit about the family. What she doesn't have is all the information at this point to know that the context of she was pretty much forced to write this. So hopefully she doesn't act irrationally and kill Sansa, because we see Arya leave the room and we see Littlefinger has pretty much drawn her to do this. And it's like, shit, what's going to happen? And then we get to see Jon and Co. at Eastwatch, and they're talking to Tormund, and he's like, isn't it your job to talk about fucking stupid ideas like this? He's like, I've been failing at that lately, yeah. So, of course, he's like, alright. So, how many queens have we got now? 2. And who are you supposed to convince? The one with the dragons or the one who fucks your brother? He's like, both. And of course, seeing Gendry kind of laughed. That's like, okay, so how many other people did you bring? He's like, not enough. He's like, big woman? And he's like, no. And because, man, Tormund really likes Brienne, and it's just funny to see that and just see it brought up. And he's like, well, you're going to need some help. And I was like, I'm standing behind. I'm more likely going to be a liability than any actual help. So I'm like, let me show you some peeps. So, of course, he's like, scouts found him about a mile by the wall. Come down and we see, we see Sandor Clegane, we see Beric Dondarrion, and we see Thoros and Myr. And everybody kind of knows everybody at this, and not in good ways. It was actually kind of interesting to see this, because Jon recognizes the Hound. He's like, I saw you at Winterfell once. And he's like, okay. And Beric's like, well, we want to go beyond the wall too. It's like, the Lord of Light, the Great War, and Ginger's like, don't trust him. Brotherhood without banners sold me to a witch to be murdered. He's like, pissed. And George recognizes, of course, Thoros, and he's like, and Thoros recognizes him back, saying he's Jorah Mormont, and he's like, they won't give me a drink. Tormund's like, you're a fucking Mormont? You've hunted us like animals. He's like, well, you return the favor. And, of course, he's like growling at him, and it's like, oh, look, we're all at the edge of the world at the same time, for the same reason, going in the same direction. And he's like, our reasons aren't yours, and like, it doesn't matter the reasons. There's a greater purpose. Serve together, know it or not, steps. But the Lord of Light, and then, of course, Sandra's like, for fuck's sake, shut up. Are you gonna let us come with you or not? And it was just really kind of cool. He's like, I don't want to freeze in this cell. And of course he's like, well, John's like, we're all on the same side. And it's like, how do you know that? Like, we're still breathing. Of course, Tormund gives him the keys. He opens it up. And it's like, all right, cool. So then we see the gate opening, and we see this kind of suicide squad, because everybody's been brought together under these circumstances. Not everybody likes each other, but they got a job to do. And John, of course, is leading the pack. And he's like looking back, seeing what's going on. Everybody's like looking. It's like, all right, go out. And we see these other people come as well. They were pulling something, but I don't know exactly what they were trying to do. So this is kind of where it ends, and it's really interesting to see where this is going to be going next, how they are going to get out of this by getting one of the dead alive, because it's going to be a bitch. And it looks like we're going to get some pretty cool battle scenes, but we don't know what's going to happen. I'm really excited to see how this turns out and how everything turns out with Arya, where Sam's going to be going, what's he going to do when he learns out that his house has pretty much been destroyed, and if he will be released from the Night's Watch to take that back. Because here's the thing, we're losing a lot of houses. You're going to need other houses and everything. They might, if Daenerys and the Living win, we could see a changing of what the Night's Watch is, and instead of vowing to hold no lands, we might have it be more like a volunteer force where people rotate out. But that's in the future, because that's going to be important. Where's he going to be? How's he going to tell Jon what he needs to know? Bran tell Jon what he needs to know, and what's going to happen, and how far the White Walkers are going to make it, how they're going to destroy the wall or get past the wall. And it's just really cool. I can't wait to see how this all shakes out. So those are my opinions on the episode. Tell me what you guys think in the comments below. If you liked it, if you didn't like it, if you agree with me, if you disagree with me. Also like and subscribe, and I hope you have a good day.